Hey, welcome everybody to today's Cameras, Coffee, and Conversation with the Leica Store in Boston. My name is John Kreidler. I'm a product specialist for Leica Camera USA. And before I introduce today's guest, let's take care of a little housekeeping. So in the chat window, please let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions for today's guest, that's where you can pose those questions, and we will be monitoring the chat window and doing our very best to answer everyone's questions. So I'm very excited for today's program. First, introducing Mark de Paola, is a New York City-based fashion and fine art photographer. Mark has shot countless campaigns and editorials for the likes of Gucci, Donna Karan, Vogue Spain, Vogue Mexico, Oscar de la Renta, Prabha Guru, and Brione. As a director, Mark has shot spots with the brands like Ducati, Ford Motorsports, Sony, and Kawasaki, as well as nearly 700 other television commercials. For the past 5 years, Depaulo's fine artwork has been exhibited around the world in Tokyo, China, Milan, Porto, New York City, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. His most recent monograph, Recent Work 1 and 2, are in the permanent collection at MoMA, New York, the Getty, and the Museum of Photographic Arts in San Diego. Bob Tursack, our second guest, who will be having a conversation with Mark and his team at Brilliant Graphics, have printed and produced projects for the likes of George Tice, Sally Mann, the National Gallery, the Museum of Modern Art, as well as countless other projects for artists, museums, and institutions around the world. Based in Exton, Pennsylvania, Brilliant Graphics is a family-owned operation that has mastered both the technical and the creative process. So at this point, gentlemen, let's talk about this process and this very exciting project that I guess we're going to unveil today.
This sounds good. Is Mark with us here?
I am.
Okay.
I promise. Yeah. It's the real me. I don't see myself though. I see you, Bob, and you look good.
Yeah. I wondered if you're there. Your screen's blank. But that being said, it's great to be here and to talk about photo books, especially the process and the results that we just finished, and I guess we're officially releasing today.
Yes,
with Mark.
Now,
Yeah. Yep. So
wow.
Yeah. Mark, do you want to talk just a little bit about how we got together on this, or would you like me to start with that?
No, I mean, it's fine. We have to rewind a little bit, back up a little bit. Bob printed 2 of the 3, the trilogy of what's called Recent Work series. We got a little delayed by the situation this year. So the 3rd version's coming out September 21 next year. So that's been a bit delayed. So we have a relationship, Brilliant, Bob and his team. And I really want to stress the importance of relationship, because this is a very elusive process. Like you might think that I'm here to, just sort of shamelessly promote my book, and that's not the case. Although this book is amazing, bear with me. This is a result of an accumulation of relationships that, like any relationship, are based on the particulars of those people or those projects. And we're able to really put this together. This particular, the 5 years and 60 seconds project started with a communication from Bob about wanting to do a real formidable effort to make a presentation for Perry Photo, which of course was delayed or postponed for this year. And that's a lofty sort of endeavor or pursuit. do accumulation of 5 years, and to put it in front of the eyes of the greatest eyes in the business from around the globe. Perry Photo, of course, originates in Paris. They have a version in Shanghai, New York, and additional cities in the works. So we've got a situation where people's best efforts were put forward in order to create or achieve a common goal. This is the result here. This is the smaller version. We could call it the smaller version. It's still 402 pages. The original assignment was to make a book that was a large-scale book for presentation at these events that's 20 inches by 27, so it opens out to 40 inches by 20, so it's like the size of a table. This is how this started, and again, we're going to go through the nature of the elements and how these relationships are necessary, and how well people and sensibilities, artistic sensibilities, get along, and like in any relationship. So I thank you, Bob, for initiating this project and putting 1,000% into it, like you have, and you're just unbelievably talented, and sort of a team with a tremendous amount of integrity. And so, yeah, that's how we got here. That's why we're here, is to share these elements, and using this as an example. Again, not trying to pitch it. They're almost sold out anyway. But so yeah, Bob, tell us about your thinking of approaching, Sage and myself about doing this project.
Yeah, I mean, I love photography, and I love printing and printmaking, and I really love photo books. I think that they are sacred, or should be so. Best said was when Robert Frank commented on photo books, and he said his books were more important than his prints. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's a pretty big statement. And he went on to elaborate, saying that, how many people are ever going to get to see my prints? How many people are ever going to see one of my exhibitions? And, it's limited, where a photo book can travel around the world. It can be in people's collections. And a photo book is evidence that someone lived, that someone created. And it's more than a book. In fact, the word book is almost pejorative. It's an artifact. It's evidence that that person, produced the work. And they should be important. So I thought a lot about that, and I thought a lot about the exhibition factor too. This is certainly long before COVID, and I had seen these very large books created by a couple different publishers. And I remember I saw one at auction and I bought it, and I was so disappointed when I got it, because the quality of the reproduction on the large sheets, and the binding, the integrity of the binding, was really not what I had hoped for to keep in my collection. So I thought, someday I want to produce one of these large books. The purpose of these books is not just to have a very large tome sitting in at home. They belong in the lobbies of really fine hotels, galleries, and such. And so I had this idea to create this book. I found a wonderful artisan binder that I've worked with since 1996, who told me that they could overcome the problems that I found in the other books that I had, or the other book that I had. And now I needed an artist, and I wanted to find someone that I really believed in, and I wanted to find work that I would be so excited about, and also who would be receptive to the idea. And not everybody is. So I was privileged to have printed Mark's books, Recent Works 1 and 2. And I really fell in love with the work. But what I really love about the work was what Mark was sharing and shared with me about the process. You can have a fine painting or a fine photograph on the wall. You can enjoy looking at it, but that's a limited experience. When you know something of the artist, the work becomes that much more real, it becomes that much more valuable. And Mark was very open, very forthcoming, and just really a great guy and very friendly, as we worked on these other two books, and shared a lot with me, taught me a lot about the physiology of seeing, the psychology of seeing. And so I thought, I want to work with this guy. So I had all of the process worked out in my head for this large book. And so I thought, I want to approach Mark and I hope he's interested. So I sent him an email, and I think it was within seconds, that I got a response back from Mark's producer, who we shall heretofore refer to as the Force. Mark is very fortunate to work with Sage as a producer, and she really helped facilitate the communication. And in short order, we got very excited about producing this book. And then when you had this large book, when we started to see the photographs coming together and the pace of the book and the pairing of images, we thought this has to go beyond this big book. And that's when we thought, let's make a 12:9 edition that we could offer in limited form, so that people could enjoy this in as wide a spread as possible. To have a book that's 402 pages, you've got to have a very meaningful, significant, cohesive body of work. And that is not easily found, because not everybody gets to work at that level, and nor can be that prolific. But the more we looked, the more I thought, this thing just goes together. And I'm just delighted with the results. But the process really begins with a relationship, as Mark had said earlier. And when there's a simpatico between printer, printmaker, artist, great things can happen. And I honestly, in my 42 years, I have printed many books that I'm very, very proud of. But this one is very special to me. It's close to my heart, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk about it, because I wish this on everybody that wants to make a book. A book should be a joyous process. It should be full of energy. When you're done, you should be spent. Not that you're physically and mentally exhausted, but that you should lay everything on the table with it. And this is one of those few occasions where the photographer made him or herself so vulnerable and so open that it created great things. And so here we are today, and I'm really hoping that what we have can be articulated and shared, so that other people can get a little piece of it. Maybe they've experienced it too and can share back. But I want this for the photographic community. This result that Mark has now will live on. It's like if you have a piece of fine crystal or a bell that's been marvelously, milled and balanced, and you ping it, it resonates and rings for a very long time. It's sustained. And that's what this book is to me, and that's what every book is. Sadly, I don't think that's the case, but I want to change that. Anybody that I know that I come in contact with and get to work with, the book has to transcend time. It has to transcend other books that maybe weren't done with as much passion. But I want them to work for the artist, and I want them to further the art of photography, which is the most beloved and powerful medium to me.
Yeah, I think it's the idea of having something live on. In this digital world, the endless scrolling of images, passing on your, 1-inch screen on your phone, 2-inch screen, whatever it is. This is a very important feature because one, sort of the neurobiology of what human sight is, that, all sight is generated through memory. It may sound strange, but when we see things, it is processed through the memory centers before we have an image. So you start thinking about when you're seeing things like scrolling on Instagram, let's say, you're getting all these images that first go to your memory and become a part of you. And the bookmaking process or printmaking process that we're talking about today is really vital to the pursuit of individuality, the pursuit of the artist, so that they separate from the endless scroll. And in this process, and then having something that's tangible on a table or on a shelf or wherever you want it to be by your bedside, is something that it is not part of this digital world that is endless and then gone. So it's a different process. So you start thinking about longevity and what is art and what is, for me, art is being a part of what I call being a part of the timeline. just being in part of the timeline of the dialogue of photography or art or whatever the medium is. And then for me is to make it a little bit larger and a little bit larger, through my efforts, but being part of the timeline is something that is tangible and continues on. And that is a print and the book form. So it sort of stops time. It's like, oh, there's this thing. Let me put it down on the table. So this is sort of the essence of what Bob is talking about here, that we make something that is uniquely ours. So where do you go from taking the picture? And the thing is that there's a translation here that is often overlooked because there's not as many people, let's say, who are creating art on the wall or in a book, compared to the people who are posting on Instagram each day. So the idea is that this is becoming a lost, sort of translation and a lost relationship. And these relationships, like, it's one thing to format an image, like certain images work on Instagram, certain images work on the wall or in a book. They're not the same images necessarily. So it's sort of like it stops at this digital, dissemination.
Hey, Mark. We had, I guess, a couple questions in the chat. One would be in terms of how does this whole thing come about with regard to the structure and organization of putting this together, kind of what that is. And the other question is, people want to know where they can get the book, and we've just to let everyone know that info is in the chat. But
okay, cool.
But really, in terms of you and Bob, how did you, basically culling images, sorting images, what was that whole experience like? And I guess how painful or not painful it was.
With that, with the relationship is that, Bob and I know each other a bit through the process of making recent work 1 and 2. Now, this book, 5 years and 60 seconds is a result of that, the beginnings of a relationship. You need to get along. I shoot in a very dynamic way. I shoot for energy, emotion. I'm not overly concerned with, specific composition or a sharpness. It's, I was talking to the great curator, Alice Gebrenner, on a project. She was curating a show that I was in. And she asked me about what I felt about the digital world. And I said, well, how much do you need to render the eyelashes on the fallen soldier, Kappa's fallen soldier, one of the iconic images of all time. And she was just silent. And like, that's really what it is. It's like, what are you trying to communicate? So obviously I have to talk about me in this process, but what it is on the other end, this simpatico, this relationship that, begins to work, is that Bob didn't want to change it to another sensibility that he felt was correct for art or photography, whatever. He saw in me like, oh, geez, this guy's doing something different. And I want to explore this. And this is the relationship. So, to give you some examples, so it's not like squashing. It's not like a human relationship where you get in a relationship and someone does something that you don't like, and then you squash that. Bob didn't squash anything. He sought to understand it or immediately understood it. So the book is set up, and the challenge here is being open-minded in this relationship where there's a broad scope of my work. I've been a commercial, director and photographer all my life, and then to go into the art world and create on a much different basis. So it's not just like doing a book of like, well, here's 100 black and white photographs, all of birds. Like that's easier, let's say. Now, I'm not gonna say easy, but let's say it's easier. The scope of this book includes some excerpts from recent work, a series called Art of Backstage. We can go into the Provini in 60 seconds. So here's some work stuff. And so this is excerpts from the prior books, which I'm proud to say are in the MoMA and the Getty. And I'm not ashamed to say that because these are lifelong pursuits of mine. So go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that fascinates me about Mark, about all photographers, but in particular about Mark, is that he sees a very unique way. He's got a beautiful visual signature, which we all want, right, as photographers. And I was fascinated as I looked at his work, thinking, how did this guy learn to see like this? And so I started talking to Mark, and he started talking about his understanding of how one sees and how one gathers experiences from his life, and they form the way that the lens works for his eye, capturing images in a certain way. So we also want to know more about the process of how he got there. So when he came and we had all these images to look at for this book, which were voluminous, we thought, how do we organize this so that it makes sense? Well, each of the series that are in this book reflect and bring to us times in Mark's shooting over the last 5 years where he was on specific projects. And even though they have different titles, they're woven together with a common way of rendering images, of visualizing images and then translating them to print. But you still have to break them down into an organized fashion, right? So we got together with a designer. We were sitting around our large conference table, had some of the images in print spread out, saying, okay, this makes sense. The 60-second series is pivotal for Mark. It's an unbelievable rendition of a number of images that need to be in and of themselves. So that was a real easy grouping to pick for the book. And we said, okay, let's build around this, just like kind of foundational. Talk to me about the vignettes. What is it about these three models? And then you hear the story behind the shooting of Yo and the others, and Emma, and then we have Provini, and then we have the art of Backstage. And Mark starts talking about how he wanted to see these subjects and these models in moments before they would, go out on the runway and before the audience. And what was he trying to say with that? And how did he capture those images? What did he do with his equipment to enable his mind and his eye to come together to create this image in this print? And so that was the next section. And all of a sudden, what seemed rather ominous and almost like, wow, how do you untangle all of this, started to flow together into a very, very logical fashion. And then it came down to, when we have the sections together, how are images paired so that they best make sense and tell this story. And that phrase, tell this story, tends to be a little bit overused today. It's like, oh my, your book has to tell a story. Oh, I hear that. What does that mean? How does that translate into a physical, palpable book that indeed has a sensibility to it and a flow to it and a logic to it? And so you start to put images together. If you've ever been on a video conference with David Allen Harvey, he lives in a nice little house down in the Carolinas, and his whole house is a studio. And if you look at his walls, there are pictures all over his walls, sequencing for future projects. Mark does the same kind of thing. Some of that is physical, some of that is mental. And then there were endless, wonderful, by the way, endless texts and conversations back and forth about these going together and those going together, and then telling the story of the sections, and then the sections all to get together to bring one big thing together, or one big story together. And you learn a lot about Mark when you look at these things, and you're inspired, and you want to think, how does my work move forward? What can I do that Mark's done that can become personal to me, that can become my visual signature, if that's where you are in your walk in photography, in your journey of reaching your highest potential as a photographer. So the book is entertaining. It should be entertaining. The book is educational. It should be educational, and it should be inspiring. I sat down with the book for the very first time Thursday night in its total entity. And, even as the printer and being involved from the very, very beginning, there's nothing like seeing that final product. It takes on a life that even though you've worked with the thing for months and months and months, when you see it all bound and together and cohesive at size and in your hands, it's something. And I started going through it, and I just had to keep on pausing. Wow. And then you just reflect on what you've just seen. That to me is success. That is a book. Again, I love this word transcendent, but it transcends other books that I have in my very, very large collection. And I want to know the difference behind that. I want to reflect on the difference the things that went into making this book different, and then carry that over into other parts of both my own work, my own personal work, and those that I meet and have the good fortune to work with.
Yeah, wow, what an experience. Yeah, it's similar. We received this the book on Friday morning. Where are we? Saturday today. So yesterday morning at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. West Coast time, and it was my first time that we'd seen examples of printing, prints and sort of curation of this process, but to have it in its cohesive form is really sort of crazy. And that's really why I'm here today, is to urge that people make something tangible. A lot of people don't feel that it is a photograph until it exists in print or in a book. And I think everyone's entitled to their own way of presenting things, but boy, it's a different deal. And especially this 400 pages, like I dare say that it's possible to be a mess. It is not in this case at all.
Hey, Mark, I'm wondering if it's possible for you to kind of summarize each of those series that are within that book. I think that'll bring something really tangible to it. I mean, I find your photography, we've worked together a number of times, but very inspirational in your work. And, I guess the question I've always wanted to ask is, who are your inspirations? So, like two separate parts. So unless you want to interweave the story, but that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, the notion, I forget whose quote it is, but it's not where you take it from, it's where you take it to. And we are, sort of an amalgam of, who we are and how we perceive things and what it excites us. But, very simply put, I'm a huge fan of photography in general, but most notably Paolo Roversi and Sally Mann. These people are just so far beyond in my realm of things, so that's sort of like the foundation of what really inspires me, not to do as they do, but to create a magnificence that they both do. And I think those two, Sally and Paolo and Richard Leroy, are the three best living photographers. But so getting to the sections, which is the first one in the book? Sorry. Recent work. Okay, so recent work was an effort to put sort of my efforts where my mouth was. I was talking about teaching, lecturing, talking, educating about the act of photography and finding a place that is specifically yours, and what the image is not created by Mount Fuji or a beautiful person, but to create an image that stirs something in you that inspires the creation of the image. And so I, was walking around in New York, and I was going like, wow, okay, let me, put this to use, because I have formidable experience and expertise. That's what I do for a living all my life. So, but to go and go out and like shoot from the heart. It sounds cliche, but you figure out a way to like just feel something, shoot that, no matter what it is. So recent work is that an exploration of just me, what that little pang. I was trying to describe to a group in a workshop like what a feeling is. I was like, oh shit, these are really smart people, and like I couldn't really describe what a feeling was. But in any case, so shoot from the heart. And that's what recent work is, and I teach it and now do it in that series. I, as many of you know, am a director and photographer in the fashion beauty sector. I know I'm going faster now because we have a lot to cover, but so the art of Backstage is an introduction to my world. I have the opportunity to be in these situations that are hard to be in. And so I wanted to show the energy and the way I see Backstage. It's not, I don't shoot backstage. I don't shoot for that purpose. This art of Backstage was intended for and is just my journey behind the scenes so other people can share in that type of energy and just sort of my world. And that's turned into a, 5-6 year project. Yeah, so that's the art of Backstage. Real proud of that stuff. And it's, again, it's very, loose and has a lot of energy. I shoot first before, focusing as the world goes by, it's sort of like just push the button, it creates this environment. Provini is a series of portraits that I've done that I just wanted to sort of grab in a more formal sense, where I grab some and put them up, standing up, very simply against a wall. And I use this very cool flashlight, and I take not a light that flashes, but a flashlight, a constant duration light that I find beautiful. And so in my travels, I do these, portraits I'm quite proud of. The vignetting, of course, is the flashlight, not beyond the 3.5 stops of the Noctilux F1, but actual light. 60 Seconds started it all. All my career, people have asked me to make books. I don't mean this in a cocky way, this is just what has happened. And to have gallery shows of my still work. And I've always seen myself as putting my art into my work. So it's sort of like, I do art every day. Why do I need a show? Why do I need a book? And I picked up I saw a scene in front of me in my New York studio, and in the middle of the night, and I picked up a camera and pushed the button. It was a Leica. I always shoot Leica, the M240, and it flashed 60, and I didn't know what to do. Put it down, or I just held my breath. And for 60 seconds, it went, and then it buffered for another 60 seconds, and an image came up that changed my life dramatically. Because for me, that was, okay, that's art for me. And I didn't care who else it was art to, it was art to me. And then I started showing around to, smart people in the field. And it really generated a lot of significant interest, because these are handheld images. And you think about how much humanity is in 60 seconds, like 52 heartbeats, 15, 17 respiratory, inhale, exhale. Like there's humanity between that subject and that camera that is beyond 125th of a second. I mean? So this is like an exploration of, physiology and like what goes on in a person who is generating an image. So this changed my life. That was the beginning, the first series of 60 Seconds, which really has not been exposed or that much, because it's just been such a rapid pace in this art world, which has been wonderful. I'm blessed, One of my blessings was I was asked by Leica Camera AG to present. One of the first people, or the first person to present at the Dali International Photography Festival in China. I was walking down this ancient street a few days before the show opening, and I see this person who's it looks like you, but her name is Yo, spelled Y-O-U. And this is, I literally just on the street just saw her, and then mentioned to the person I was a guest of, oh, did you see this person? And they were like, she ran over to her like, oh my God, there's this photographer from New York, like, would you like to work with him? And she was like, sure. Of course, all in Chinese. And so I had this just, amazing experience of working with this gal. And this was the first image, it's up on the screen, that I shot of her. And we shot for a week during that, that one episode. I've worked with her again subsequently, also in China, in another section of China. But this is stuff that, like, this is a fairy tale. Like, you can't make this stuff up. The connection between this woman, who I have no connection verbally, but the connection of two souls from such divergent backgrounds. I mean, she lives in her family home in the hills above Dali. They have dirt floors. This is a different world than the Upper West Side of New York. Also, shout out to, we got Philly and Boston, so I digress for a second. So shout out to all three of those great East Coast cities that keep it so dynamic. So this is stuff that was, I shot for various designers and editorials, and we just used Yo for this. And at the very end of this first episode, I found her crying hysterically at the very last day. We have those images, right?
No,
Not in there. Well, they probably come up later.
they're in the book.
They're in the book. It's true. So in any case, she's crying hysterically. I don't know how to console her other than to be sympathetic. And I went to one of the people who speak Chinese. I'm traveling with, and she was so moved by the experience. Like it's moving me right now, even remembering it, that it was over the next day. Like she just it was such a incredible experience for me. I've been doing this for a really long time, and to have this type of connection, that is what we must do. We must connect. We can't just take a picture of Mount Fuji, which I've done. It's got to be, how does it affect you? You know what I mean? And how do you put it into a form that this is tangible? You know what I mean? Like, how do you take your emotions, your sensibility, your way of seeing the world, and make it stick? You can see I'm always inspired, but this is a very moving experience. And in continuing in this vein, there were a couple other people who are really significant to me. Lauren Isabo is, she's just a little fairy. I don't know how to describe her. She teaches at the master's level at Columbia University. She teaches poetry. So this is like a person with a great substance. Not that you need to do it only that route, but trust me. And so I'm blessed to be able to work with her. She worked with very few people. Alan had mentioned that she had worked with a friend of his as well, who's a very fine photographer, but very, very fortunate. Like, I feel really blessed. And these are the images that were generated for that, the results. And there's also her writing in the book, her own poetry, which was really sort of amazing. I spent, my whole, schooling in studying literature. So like, this is very dear to me. Here's an example of an image, and then also the writing on it. Yeah, something like that. So we would just every few weeks for over the series of months, we would she'd come to the studio in New York, and we just photograph. And I would largely let her be the author of her own sort of segment. And she brought in this mask. It was a plaster cast of her own face, and then this image that you see now, that's the plaster cast and her. Like, these are things that come from working with other people and allowing them to participate in, like having a little blessing of their soul, And then the last one, Emma, is actually sitting about 8 feet from me, right behind the camera. We are working on a project that will be announced after the first of the year. And this is a person who, how do you describe it? I'm friends with her husband, Bill Brown, who's a talented photographer and crazy, sort of fanatic about photography and communication and literature and all these things. But so I had asked Bill one day, I said, I didn't ask. I said, wow, one day I said, I'd love to photograph Emma, who's a very fine and accomplished model. And he said, oh yeah, call her agent. And like in my world, that's the brush off. Like once that's sort of like, oh yeah, call my lawyer, so for a couple of years we would, got to know each other. We, have lunch, have coffee and this and that. So finally Emma one day says, hey, we should shoot sometime, like, I was like, oh, sure. And so this, you probably want to get through that card. I don't know about the nudity thing, but so this is years of work with Emma that, like, every time I pick up the camera, like literally, it's just magic, and these are things that need to be chronicled. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so where do they go? Instagram, great. You got some followers, you got some apparent friends, people who like things with hearts and this and that, and whatever, I call bullshit. You know, yes, it's a good marketing tool. Yes, I have one. You know, it's sort of fun, but I'm about tangible. Like, can you touch it? You know, like, and the cool thing about this is that I'm able to live with it. It's not in a file. It's not, you know, tucked away in, you know, flat file, you know, print files. It's really moving for me to be able to just go through my own work and live with it a little bit, because I work at such a high pace. Like, you know, it's sort of like, but at the end of that day, that job is over, you know, and this I like, you know. And then, of course, at the end of the book, we have a whole, what was it, like a glossary or an index, yeah, of all the work. Thank you, Sage, for your, you know, exhaustible effort, you know, to put this stuff together, all the details. Do we know how many images there are actually in the book?
357.
Oh, so 357 images in the book, and, you know, putting together, you know, Sage putting together, and Bob with his team, and allowing me to be me, you know, because you can get lost in the constant, you know, algorithm. So.
Hey, Mark, I have another question from the audience, and I think it would be great to get your comments as well as Bob's comments on this. For photographers in general who are looking, you know, thinking about doing a book project, you know, not everybody has the resources, or let's be honest, the work to put something like this together. How does that journey begin? I know you've made, you know, recent work 1 and 2 were kind of, you know, I believe your first couple books, but what advice could you give? And I think I know part of the answer, but you know, to people that are looking to start to get into the idea of creating a book.
Yeah, you know, the process varies. I mean, you know, one of the greats at this is Ralph Gibson, who really sort of pioneered the photo book, you know, I guess in the early 70s. And, you know, so he's got his process, and there are different processes whereby you can create something. You can, you know, do a risograph, you know, printed, you know, stapled together thing, you know. So it starts with just the intent is, what do you have to say? And you know, put it together in the form that you can at that particular time, and grow with that. Like you said, like I had, you know, Bob asked, like, oh, do you want to do a 400-page book? You know, I joked to Sage, and I say, tell him I'll get back to him. That's the way that, you know, sort of started. But yeah, I had to have the work, because Bob had a, you know, a turnaround, you know, that needed to be met, you know, for Perry Photo. Perry Photo New York in that case, and so, you know, so in that case, yes, I had to have the work already, and, you know, so it translates to this book. But, you know, you start with a print, you know, like go to, you know, FedEx, make a Xerox copy of something, you know, buy a little printer, make a print. These are things that you can, you know, tack it on the wall. Like that's a beginning. That's a reality. You walk by it, it's still there. You know what I mean? And so it starts with the intent, is having something to say. Like, what do you have to say? You know, when you take that picture of Mount Fuji, how is it going to be different from the other ones? You know what I mean? I did a shot that I think is in this book that is of the River Seine in Paris, that like you can't even recognize it. But it was I loved the design of what I photographed. That was me being there. It wasn't like, you know, Eiffel Tower, you know, like, respectfully, you know. So the idea is like having something to say, or as Ralph would say, you know, having a point of departure. What are you shooting? What do you want to shoot? Like, what do you have to say? So have something to say, enough so that you have ego. People speak of ego being like not good. No, ego is good. Without the ego, why are you going to make a picture of anything, you know, unless you feel you have something to say, you know? So figure that part out first, and then there are many ways to get started. Well, actually, we are starting a continuity series with Leica, being announced right now, with Leica Academy USA, with John and Tom Smith, about, we're calling it the journey to print. That's the title of the program. So that will be coming up as soon as we put all the details together, so that I can share what I know, because this is important to me. It's not, I don't want to create in a vacuum. I want to be able to give back the energy and the intent to do this stuff. This isn't about me, So this is where, Bob, we wanted to show a relationship, that is an example of what to do, and with guidance. Bob, you can answer the rest of the question in terms of.
I think this is a great question. Where do you begin? I also am a working photographer. I'm 61. I've photographed my entire life. I started when I was 12, but I've never really finished a body of work. And I figured maybe that's just not my destiny, but with all that's been going on, I really want to see what I can do as a photographer. So I was sitting at my computer, and this advertisement came up from Leica Academy for the Ralph Gibson offering. I think I nearly broke my wrist, reaching for my keyboard to register for that. And that was the beginning of something very, very important to me. I'm on that process now of doing a book. Doing a book can do this for you, for any photographer listening. They say, if you live in your home and you never get around to finishing a project, like finishing that, decorating that room or cleaning this area or doing something, the best way to do that is to schedule a party, right? You got to get it done. So I've embarked on this year-long venture. Next September, my first book will be released. And I have never shot so much, so intently, sought so much help, asked so many questions, and had such a feeling of fulfillment as since I started that project this past September with that offering with Ralph. So I'm on a destination now. That book is going to come out. I've announced it. I can't turn back. I've even found space to have a little pop-up exhibition. So a book can do an amazing thing for you as a photographer. And I so encourage anyone who is really serious about the craft and really lives and breathes this medium. A book is important to you. Let it be your legacy, a piece of your legacy, and then continue with them. I love what Ralph did. I love what Mark's doing, in that they've embarked on books, and now there's going to be this chain that keeps on going up of their work, recorded and available for everyone else to see. There's no greater gift, I think, than an artist can leave and to give back to the community than a recording of their work. And exhibitions are amazing. I'll never stop going to, I can't wait for this whole thing to be over so we can go back to exhibitions, but they are limited. The books are powerful. And so I say, how do you get started, or what do you do? You don't need to embark on generating a tome like Mark just did. You can be met right where you are. It doesn't have to be a 400-page volume. It can be a 48-page volume. As long as it's cohesive and it represents what you're doing, and it first and foremost, it moves and changes your heart to what you're doing and makes you work. So there's no greater way to do it. A book is a great taskmaster. It's a great mistress. It's a thing that can really, really move your work forward. So the way to begin is just simply to decide on a body of work and begin, and you'll get there.
So Bob, I guess with that, what can you tell us about like the printing process? So how do we decide, say, types of paper or sizes, volumes? What kind of insight can you give us into that process, and what should we as photographers looking to get into this start to think about and formulate in our mind about putting a project like that together?
Sure. I think one way to start that is to find books that you really like and that move you, and to use them maybe as a template and as a guide toward moving that way. Listen, putting the mechanics of the book together is the easy part. And it starts with, when you're starting on an idea of doing a book, start concepts right there. Learn to, or find a designer that you really like and that you want to work with. Or if you're going to design it yourself, which is that's a pretty big undertaking, but it can be done, begin that work early. That's what I've done. And it's helping me to format how I even see my photographs. I started shooting like, will this go with that? before I even take that exposure and or make that exposure. And that's a good way to begin. As far as materials go and where do you begin, there are nearly countless things you can do. This piece that Mark had, one of the things that his photographs have a very soft nature, right? Mark doesn't use the focus ring. He hasn't yet learned what that does. So I say that adoringly. So
it's so bourgeois, that focus thing.
He also super glued his aperture to wide opens. But
is there any other way?
Right. But no, his photographs have a soft quality, so I didn't want the book to have any kind of gloss to it. I didn't want it to have any kind of slick nature to it. So we actually got fabric and tried printing on it and developed a set of curves and separations that work. And the cover to these books are printed fabric. And I think it beautifully introduces you to the work that's inside. And that's the other thing too, is everything, paper, typography, the cover, whether it's a soft cover, which can be amazing, a hard cover, the quarter binding, anything that's going to go into that book has to support the work. It has to support the photographs. It cannot be an homage to a designer's effort. That's the wrong thing. It all has to work to say something about the photographs that reside within. The cover should introduce you to the text. The flyleaf should welcome you, but it all has to be about the images. That's what this whole thing is for.
Cool. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's great insight. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us as photographers, some deep down part of the soul, really would like this. And, you have to examine why that is, and then what work and how you're going to put it together. So, Mark, I mean, you obviously have worked a long time to get to this point. And this relationship with Bob kind of seems to have been the start of creating this monolith of a book. I guess, where do you go from here?
Well, we're already 3 ahead. We have 3 in the queue, as they say. So,
oh wow,
we continue working. Yeah. So it is a process, for me, I continue on. And, for me, this is, like I've said before, it's tangible, it lives on. Right. And so then I think about that, like, oh, okay, what is next? What do I want next to live on? So I start, creating that way as an artist, not just a picture, but, a body of work. What do I want to communicate? So, so of course, the recent work 3 is coming up, and that's already, I've been photographing all year for that. So, that.
Yeah, when we talk about, I guess, going back to the book, the design elements, each book comes with a print, and I'm wondering how that whole idea came about. To me, it seems somewhat unique, but I think a great idea, because it's another medium that can be set apart from the book. How did that idea come about?
Well, it was Bob's idea to do it, because he didn't want it to be just end up with the 3 large books that limited people compared to other arenas of distribution would be capable of seeing. So he wanted to have a broader scope of the books, so we made a smaller book. And he thought one great way to do that is to offer a print with the book. Fine art print that's limited numbers. There's 20 images in addition to 10 only. There are a few that are already sold out. So, and I had seen that actually years back with Mona Kuhn had done her first, I don't know her first book, but her first book to me, and there was an offering at a gallery in San Francisco where there was the book and the print that was on the cover, which I loved and loved. I couldn't quite put it together at that time, but I always sort of kicked myself. I was like, oh God, I could have had that print, for very little money. But so this is a sort of enticing way to get people more eyes to see it, with an opportunity to buy a print at significantly reduced number, and then also have the book as well. So that's it's been successful. We I think sold like half the edition, and it just got here.
Wow, wow, that's amazing.
So it's
Yeah.
well, it's cool. And people are excited about the choice of images, from the book, obviously. And there are the different genres, the different series in the book, as we've described. And so, so you can choose, choose your favorite picture. Like I said, a couple of them are already sold out. Yeah, so that's how that came about. Was, again, Bob, I mean, this is his world,
Yeah.
It's an important project.
As a printer and a lover of photography too, and I revere books. I want people to have this book. Actually, any book I do, I believe in. There have been books that I've said, I don't think this is the right project for me. And I always try to let the photographer, the artist, let me in, and that doesn't always happen. But Mark let me in, and I really got to know a lot more than I ever had hoped for. That's that.
Or wanted to, maybe.
I really wanted to understand the process. And so I believe that in the book so much that I want the recipient to get more. You always want more. You want to give all you can to the experience. So I suggested to Mark about, let's include a 9x12 print. A 9x12 print of Mark sells for $1,500. The book.
I think more actually.
A bunch of prints. That's, the prints in the book themselves are worth it. But when you can have the print and the book together, it creates, again, what I want to refer to, what I love to refer to as an artifact. It is not simply, a book. It's more than that, and it has a life beyond that. And anytime we can do that, we can. I have a small book that we're doing for an 18-year-old artist. That may sound like, how can an 18-year-old be? Let me tell you something. This young lady is a genius. She is a genius, and I can't wait to see where she goes. And to talk to her is amazing. So in her book, we put a little code that'll take you to about a 90-second video of her talking about why she embarked on this little mission. So if we can do anything without getting kitschy, I don't want tricks, I don't want cute, I want substance. So I think that the print adds substance to this book, this little snippet where you can have this young lady talk to you while you have the book in your hands with your mobile device right next to you. These are things that are meaningful and they're substantial, and they add to the value of both the experience and simply owning the book. Every book should be an investment, and I think we've achieved that here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
not like this is not a sales pitch, for me at all. It's the sharing of a life-changing emotional event. This is what I want to impart to others, like my own experience. Like, I'm learning things every day still, which is quite a when you spend so much time at something, to learn new things. So
that's awesome. So yeah, so we're right at the 1 hour mark. We're going to extend 15 minutes. I understand we have the Force is going to join us. Mark's producer Sage, as well as Emma. So everyone that's got any questions for the group,
that's cool.
Please use the chat. And if there are no questions, we're just going to let Sage talk.
You don't want to hear me talk at all, do you? Oh my God, thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm Mark's producer, Sage. This is Emma. Hello. Okay, so the video will be uploaded to YouTube on the Depaulo Pictures YouTube channel. I'm gonna go through as many of these as I can. Mark's influences we got. As part of your work seems to focus on the female body, what is your view on the male gaze in photographing women, as briefly as you can possibly?
Big topic. You know, I believe that people should have their own sensibilities. I think there's a bit of, too much of, defining things. I do believe that there is a male gaze, and I do believe that there's a female gaze. I just don't believe that they're necessarily defined by gender. People, sort of feel about things the way they do, and they should project that in their work. But there are differences and there are similarities. I mean, like, I know females who shoot the male gaze, and I know males who shoot more with more sensitivity or more femininity, let's say. So this is it's to be considered, and it's an important element. The most important thing is just having an even playing field. Women have been severely, unbelievably underrepresented in the art world throughout history and continue to today. At least there's more dialogue going on, which is very important to me, and one of my sort of main themes. So yeah, I'm fascinated by women, always have been. And so it's a theme of mine to try to further understand the complexity of the female, and that's just my thing. And I think other people are entitled to, and they should have their own ability to communicate across the board. So yeah.
That's a whole different lecture that we can hopefully do someday.
Yeah.
But a very important one. Black and white and color are together and are close to each other and close together in sequence. Can you comment on that thinking? So I was really the one that kind of took the chaos and put things into neat piles, and Mark shoots equally color and black and white. And pairing images is a very interesting thing, because Mark has some very clear thematic things in his work in terms of content and also form and color relationships. So when you're looking through the book, the reason for the sequencing or pairing, it varies from page to page. And to me, that's what's so exciting and beautiful about going through a really beautiful photographic book so many times, is that you're finding, I might have a color image and a black and white image, but it might just be about the narrative between the two. Typically also your eye, when you turn the page, it goes to the right first, right? And so I might put a color image on the left-hand side so that way your eye moves quickly through that first image to move to the left. There are so many different reasons for things, but really also wanted it to make it not about it being a color or a black and white image, to make it more about the photograph. I think often you see photography books that are about the book being color, about the book being a black and white. This book is not about color or black and white images. It's about the photographs as themselves. So I hope that answers your question. Again, another lecture for another day on sequencing and pairings.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
And I'm putting you on the spot, Emma.
Love it.
And I don't know whether you want to be on the spot, but you can accept or decline. But yeah, so on this male gaze, female gaze, it might be interesting for Emma to comment on that. She works with a lot of people all over the globe, different genders, as defined. Male gaze, female gaze. Like, maybe you can just add to that a little bit, because you experience it from a different point of view. Yeah.
This is a tricky one, because it's something that we talk about a lot, especially in this current year and time period. I don't really know what to add to that, because I'm with you on your stance on it and how I feel about it. I read something this morning, and I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly, but it was talking about how there's a lot of negativity when we talk about the male gaze, but this person was bringing up, it's not about the male gaze being something we should go away from. It's about what that looks like and what your male gaze is, or what your female gaze is, and just coming at the way you shoot and the way you view your world with a perspective of levity and positivity. And I'm a big fan of both the female gaze and the male gaze, because they're unique. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I thought it's important to get that. Yeah. the other side of the camera.
So one thing I just want to mention too is that Bob is unique in that he is both a printer and a publisher. You do not need a publisher in order to print a book. And when you're talking about resources and getting something better than Blurb, you can just go directly to Brilliant and have a book printed with them, obviously pending that your project is approved. You do not need to have permission to create a beautiful photographic book nowadays, which is amazing. So gather your resources, start a Kickstarter campaign, you know, call your aunts and uncles and grandparents and friends and get the money together. Another thing I will say too is obviously when you're creating a book like this or of a volume that is hundreds of copies, you also want to keep in mind that you don't want all of that sitting in your garage as well. So distribution is another sort of factor, which obviously is a lot more helpful when you do have a publisher and they already have those contacts and those relationships. So it's great because you may have more freedom, but at the same time, it is a lot more work to be self-publishing, but you can now, which is great. So also just to be clear about the two different versions for this book. So there are three currently 20 by 27 inch large gallery books that are going to be traveling around the world to be exhibited in galleries, high-end hotels, venues, shops, things like that. There are only 200 of these 9 by 12 versions. We will be offering a very select few, and I hope they can stay available if anybody is interested in them because they're going to go quickly, of the large book. We eventually want to make that available to the public. So if that is something that somebody is interested in, please email us directly as we are going to be announcing that soon. So Bob, can you speak to paper types and about, which actually it's so funny, we had this conversation the other day, about how you really don't sacrifice quality for price. What do you do when you have clients coming to you like me saying, how can we bring the cost down and make a superlative product?
Well, I love those conversations. I really do, because you don't have to be Rockefeller to print a book. You know, a lot of people are very concerned about that. It's best to know if we can know what the budget is up front, then we can work around that. This 200 series, I'm amazed at what we did for the money that we spent on it. Now, you can't build up false expectations. I don't want to do that. But you don't have to use the best paper in the world in order to produce an amazing body of work. In fact, there are times that lesser papers print better for particular kinds of images. So forget, you know, name brands, forget all of that. Let's find what works. We have both an offset and a digital department for printing. And one of the coolest things today with digital printing is a photographer can come to me, and one of the first questions is about paper: uncoated, coated, textured, no coated, gloss, matte, dull. It's endless. It's just endless. Send me 2 signature images that you want to put in your book. Let's proof them. Usually there's little, if any, cost to doing that. The digital press is on the other side of the wall from my office right here, and the offset presses are about 50 yards away. So we have all these resources that we can get together and really begin to think through those processes and get the very best paper for the photograph. I'll say it again. Materials are secondary, images are primary. Design, important, but it's supportive and secondary. Images are primary. Everything has to go to the image. And then the 3 most important questions we ask are: what is important about this project? What is critical about this project? And how are you going to use this project? Some people are creating books to create an income stream. Other people are creating books for that, or to introduce themselves to galleries and gallerists that they will never otherwise get the opportunity to meet. I had one artist come to me and he wanted 1 book. It was for a meeting with a major cosmetic company. He wanted to differentiate himself among the other photographers they were talking to. He did it was a beautiful project, stunning project. Incidentally, we didn't use binding on the project. It was loose signatures. wrapped in a cover. Beautiful. Flew to Paris, went to the meeting, got the gig. I think it was a 3-year gig. So one book, that was the purpose of that book. Now, if I would not have known how he was going to use that book, I would have formulated things in my head about how that piece should be based on limited information and would have probably given him the wrong solution. So it's that whole thing. The more we talk in the beginning, the better the result on the other side. So if that answers your question, you know, papers, materials, binding, leather, no leather, stamping, no stamping, all of that stuff is fun, but it's the easy part. Let's understand the intent, the mission, and let me as far inside your head as you'll allow me to go, so I can understand about the images and why you created them, how you created them is also very, very important, both mechanically and psychologically. I need to know both. All those things are important to talk about.
Thank you,
Cool.
Bob. Again, a whole lecture in and of itself, which we're going to tease in a second. So, Mark, in 30 seconds, because we now have 2 minutes to wrap this thing up. Thank you all for sticking with us for this long. You obviously have your own distinctive style. How did you get there, and what's your advice to other photographers in looking for their own style?
Be mindful of how we see and how we commit our vision to memory, because you've got to separate from it in the sense that you have to draw on your own sensibilities. What is it about that? Like I'm making a motion picture right now, so I've been referencing, you know, photography to motion picture. What's your movie? Who's in it? What are they wearing? Where are they from? Do they have siblings? What are the conflicts they've had to overcome in their life? It's sort of like when you're telling a story, and that can be boiled down to a still image. What are you doing it for? You know what I mean? How is it that you are in it? You have to put, in my world, have to put your own self into it, or you don't differentiate, you know, from anybody else. And that doesn't work. Like this guy who did the one book and flew off to Paris. That was unique to him enough to get the gig. And that's what's important. How do you get the gig? What's your intention? And how do you bring yourself to the forefront in that medium with using the expertise of like Bob and Brilliant or wherever you know, and designers or not, or what? It's got to have a piece of you. What makes it different? What's your story? What are you laughing
Sorry,
about?
I'm laughing.
Okay.
Thanks, Dana. And
Paige.
Max, good to see you.
Paige.
Yeah.
May I answer a question? I think this is the most important question of the session. It says, what is your advice to other photographers looking for their own style? You know, through this process, I have gotten way more out of this relationship than Mark has. I have learned so much from him. He's in my head when I'm out in the field. The Leica Academy session with Ralph Gibson, I would say the same kind of thing. My advice, very personal here, my advice for anyone looking to develop their own style, this is what you should be doing. This is the most important thing you could be doing. You don't want to be copying other people's work. You want your own visual signature. My advice to you is this. The next time you're thinking about spending money on a gadget, you know, another lens, another buy, don't. Contract with a photographer you really, really admire. Get a mentorship going. And they will guide you. I think that through the, I don't know if Leica started these academy sessions because of COVID or how they all, I don't know the history. I don't know anything about that. All I know is I am forever grateful for the sessions that I had. And I would pay that money again, double for a recurring session because I want to continue it, you know? So if you're looking to develop your own style, God bless you for trying to do that. And don't lose that, that mission, but find someone that you can mentor with. Like I say, I have gotten an MFA through this bookmark. Thank you. You know, for learning how to see, learning how to see better. I would say that the last 42 years have been good, but I feel like I've just been reborn because of that. So go for it. You know, really, really look for your own visual signature. Find it. You can find it. Just get guidance to help you along the way.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Amen.
That's amazing. Like I don't even know how to respond to it other than
and
thank you.
I want to continue that piece of love as well. This is a very short list of the many models, hairstylists, makeup artists, production teams, location scouts.
Sage.
me, Emma, Phil, the designer, Bob's whole team, which is a whole team of people that have made this project possible. Obviously starting with Mark. So thank you. We love you. You are every bit a part of this book as Mark is. And that is why every one of their names is in this book and in this index.
This is a
we
team
love you.
sport. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much. Here are a couple things that I just want to plug in the end. A couple of upcoming events that we're doing with the Academy. One is that Mark is doing ongoing bespoke programs, which are 2-hour online programs with curriculum catered to you. You and I have an intake call. We put together the topics you want to cover, and then we just go through it, go at it for 2 hours. They've been extremely successful, especially this year. And the other really exciting thing that we just want to tease today is that we are working on a journey to print with Mark, which is going to be the opportunity to be mentored by Mark, working with me, a designer, and Bob's team to actually create your own photographic
make
book.
your book. Yeah.
This is going to be by application only. It is going to be extremely selective for those that are very serious about the craft and have a body of work that is
They gotta be ready. Yeah.
Yeah, ready to go. So stay tuned for that program. Please email academy@Leica USA if that is something that you are all interested in, so that we can make sure that you get on the wait list to give you a chance to apply first before anybody else. And finally, here's all of our contact information. Email me, that's my cell number. Email Bob, he is wonderful, as you see. Email Leica Boston as well. I think that Alan has been putting links to some of the equipment that was used during this.
Yeah, this entire book was shot with Leica cameras, by the way. So it's almost like an encyclopedia of what you can do with Leica cameras. Like, shooting the S camera, the SL, of course, I'm an M shooter, and everything's shot wide open, no post-production. It's a great sort of expose of what the scope of the product line. So.
Amazing. If you did not have your answered question today, or you would like to continue the dialogue, email me and I will get responses from Mark to you as soon as possible.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Alan.
John.
Thank you, Leica Boston.
Thank you, guys.
Bob. Thank you, John. You're the
Tom
man.
Smith, the Academy, Leica AG, all those
you.
peoples.
Mwah.
All right.
You all are amazing.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
We'll see you later.
All right. Thanks everybody for hanging in with us for Cameras, Coffee, and Conversation. We'll see you in 2 weeks where we'll have another exciting, not as exciting as this though, fun-filled episode.
Qualify that.
So see you the next time, everybody. Take care, everybody.
See you, John.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.